Just 1 minute ago, behind the ancient stone walls of the church, a vault no monarch dared to open was finally unsealed, and inside, a document so explosive it threatens to rewrite centuries of royal succession. What if everything the public believed about the throne was incomplete? What if destiny had been hidden intentionally? Tonight, the silence is broken, and the crown may never be the same again. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The order did not come lightly. It came from the very top of the church itself. The Archbishop, bound by sacred oath and centuries of caution, authorized the opening of ecclesiastical records that had remained untouched for generations. These were not ordinary archives. They were sealed testimonies, sworn under spiritual authority, guarded not by locks alone, but by silence. For decades, rumors had circulated that within those ancient pages lay something more than ceremony, more than routine lineage confirmations. There were whispers of a divergence, a hidden branch of bloodline that had been quietly noted, then deliberately obscured. When the seal was broken, what emerged was not scandal in the modern sense, it was something far more destabilizing. A genealogical record meticulously preserved, connecting Catherine to a sacred royal line that predated the current order of succession. The implication was breathtaking. Not a coincidence, not a distant ancestral footnote. A direct, unbroken thread woven through history itself. And if the record was authentic, and the Archbishop's authority suggests, it is then Catherine's place in the monarchy was never merely by marriage. It was written long before her name was known to the public. Inside palace walls, the reaction was immediate and electric. Silence first, then calculation. Senior figures who had long dismissed such theories suddenly found themselves confronted with documentation bearing church endorsement. Some had heard fragments over the years, hints of an unusual lineage, subtle acknowledgements in private discussions, but none expected the church to make it real, to validate it, to give it weight beyond rumor. Because when the church speaks of bloodlines, it does not speak lightly, it speaks of destiny. And destiny is dangerous. The church's involvement shifts this revelation from political curiosity to divine implication. Monarchies have always claimed blessing, but this record suggests something bolder: selection. It reframes Catherine not simply as consort, not simply as future queen by marriage, but as someone whose claim echoes from centuries past. That distinction is not symbolic, it is seismic. Because if her right is embedded in sacred documentation, then hierarchy becomes fragile, titles become vulnerable, loyalty becomes complicated. Within hours, conversations intensified behind closed doors. Advisors scramble to assess what this means constitutionally, spiritually, publicly. The panic is not theatrical, it is strategic. If the public begins to see Catherine as divinely anchored to the throne, perception alone could alter the monarchy's internal balance. Power in royal circles has always depended as much on belief as on law, and belief is shifting. Yet this is only the beginning, because sealed records do not emerge without reason. They are opened when the time demands it, and the timing, so sudden, so deliberate, suggests that this revelation was not merely discovered, it was chosen. But to understand why this revelation is so seismic, we must go back far beyond modern monarchy into a prophecy almost erased from history. Centuries before Catherine ever set foot in a palace, an ancient prophecy, whispered through cathedral halls, foretold a sovereign not born of expectation, but chosen by heaven. The words were dismissed as folklore until today. Now sealed church manuscripts appear to confirm what once sounded impossible, that the throne was destined to pass through a line concealed in plain sight, and Catherine's name is written where no one expected it. Long before parliaments argued succession and newspapers debated heirs, the church guarded a different understanding of monarchy. In fading Latin script, preserved in fragile parchment, there are references to a future sovereign who would rise not from the obvious branch of power, but from a quieter line, one undecimated, overlooked, almost forgotten. This prophecy did not describe crowns or ceremonies. It spoke of endurance, of grace under scrutiny, of a figure who would carry both burden and blessing without demanding either. For centuries, scholars treated it as poetic symbolism, an allegory for faith, rather than a forecast of bloodline. But symbolism has a way of becoming literal when history aligns too precisely to ignore. The medieval church was never merely spiritual. It was political gravity. Kings rose with its blessing and fell under its silence. Entire dynasties were stabilized by a single declaration from the pulpit, while others crumbled when that endorsement was withheld. Divine monarchy was not a metaphor in those centuries. It was the foundation of authority itself. And hidden within those manuscripts was a genealogical annotation, subtle but undeniable, connecting Catherine's ancestry to a sacred lineage believed to have diverged generations ago during a contested succession. The divergence was never erased. It was simply set aside, protected, preserved, waiting. When the Archbishop first encountered the alignment between prophecy and genealogy, doubt must have gripped him. To reveal such a truth would not only challenge tradition, it would unsettle the very architecture of the modern monarchy. For years, fragments of this lineage had lingered in theological debate, footnotes in academic margins, curiosities for historians who never dared take them seriously. But now, with Catherine's name threaded into both ancestral record and prophetic language, coincidence felt impossible. The documents did not shout, they whispered. And that whisper was more dangerous than any accusation. Imagine discovering that your place in history was never accidental, that your marriage into royalty was not the beginning of your claim, but merely the moment it became visible. Catherine's life, her composure, her trials, the scrutiny she endured suddenly reframes itself, not as preparation for partnership, but as preparation for destiny. That realization carries weight. Destiny is not glamorous. It isolates. It demands sacrifice without consent. And while the public may see revelation as triumph, the personal cost of such knowledge is far heavier than applause. Inside the church, the decision to disclose this alignment was agonizing. The Archbishop understood the storm it would unleash. Faith can unite, but it can also divide. By validating the prophecy, he risked destabilizing established hierarchy. By concealing it, he risked betraying truth. And so he chose revelation, not loudly, not recklessly, but deliberately. Because once sacred ink meets modern authority, silence becomes complicity. Already, palace advisor sensed the shift. A prophecy made tangible is not easily dismissed. It plants doubt where certainty once stood. It inspires belief where protocol once reigned. And belief, in a monarchy built on symbolism, can move faster than law. The question is no longer whether the prophecy exists, it is whether the institution can survive its fulfillment. And as sacred ink meets modern power, the palace begins to fracture under the weight of what this means. When the Archbishop's declaration reached royal corridors, the reaction was not celebration, it was silence. A silence heavy with calculation. Because if Catherine's right is divine, then someone else's authority becomes temporary. And in the monarchy, temporary power is the most dangerous kind. Behind closed doors, alliances begin shifting, loyalty is questioned. And the future king may not be the only one reassessing his position. The first calls were not to the press, but to constitutional advisors. Legal minds who had spent decades mastering precedent suddenly found themselves confronting something no statute had prepared them for. Divine validation does not fit neatly into parliamentary language. It does not bend to protocol. Senior advisors scrambled to interpret the implications, searching for reassurance in clauses and ceremonial tradition, yet the more they examined the framework, the more fragile it seemed. Because monarchy is built not only on law, but on belief, and belief had just been disrupted at its core. Some within the palace tried to minimize it. A theological curiosity, they argued. Symbolic, harmless, but privately, the tone was different. If the public embraced the church's declaration as sacred truth, it could reshape perception overnight. Succession may be codified in legislation, but legitimacy lives in the hearts of people. And when legitimacy appears divinely endorsed, it becomes untouchable. That realization tightened conversations, sharpened glances, and exposed quiet rivalries that had long remained beneath the surface. Catherine herself did not react with triumph. Those close to her sensed something more complex: shock, layered with humility, and beneath that, an unmistakable current of fear. To be named by prophecy is not liberation, it is burden. Her life had already been scrutinized beyond measure, every gesture interpreted, every silence analyzed. Now, the narrative around her shifted from preparation to destiny. That shift carries expectation, and expectation, when rooted in faith, is heavier than any crown. She did not seek this claim, yet it had found her. Meanwhile, tension between tradition and divine legitimacy began to swell. For generations, the monarchy has carefully balanced its relationship with the church, symbolically intertwined, yet politically separate. Now that boundary blurred. If the church's sealed records suggest a deeper right, does that supersede established succession? Advisors debated in hushed urgency. Some insisted nothing changes without constitutional reform. Others warned that dismissing the church outright would appear reckless, even defiant. The balance was delicate, and every statement risked igniting something irreversible. Outside the palace, the media storm intensified. Headlines spoke of prophecy fulfilled, of sacred bloodlines revealed. Commentators speculated about what this means for the future king, for the children, for the continuity of the crown. Public fascination turned electric. Social conversation spiraled. Support swelled from unexpected corners. Faith communities voicing conviction that history was unfolding exactly as foretold. The palace gates became a symbol of tension inside, strategy, outside, belief. And beneath it all, a larger question loomed unspoken. If divine endorsement reshapes perception, then the monarchy faces not just political adjustment, but existential reckoning. Faith and crown have long coexisted in careful choreography. But choreography becomes confrontation when destiny enters the room. The silence in those corridors was not empty. It was charged, because once divine right is publicly spoken, it cannot be easily retracted. But the true earthquake isn't political, it's spiritual, and it strikes at the very heart of monarchy itself. For centuries, monarchs claimed a divine blessing. But what happens when the church claims divine selection? The difference is subtle yet revolutionary. Because blessing supports power, selection replaces it. And now, Catherine stands at the intersection of theology and throne. Is this destiny or disruption? As bishops, deliberate, and royal advisors panic, one question echoes louder than ever. Who truly chooses a monarch? The monarchy has always walked hand in hand with the church, but the roles were carefully defined. The crown ruled, the church anointed. One governed the nation, the other sanctified the moment. It was a choreography perfected over generations, a balance between spiritual symbolism and constitutional order. Yet what the sealed records suggest is not a blessing bestowed after succession. It is a right embedded before it. That distinction changes everything. Coronation affirms authority. Divine right asserts it. And if Catherine's claim rests not merely on marriage but on sacred lineage, then tradition finds itself facing a theological reckoning it never anticipated. Within church circles, the debate has grown intense. Some argue that the Archbishop's revelation does not overthrow succession, but deepens it, framing Catherine as part of a providential design rather than an accidental consort. Others warn that even implying divine preference risks destabilizing the constitutional monarchy itself. The Church's authority may be largely symbolic in modern governance, but symbolism is powerful. It shapes public imagination. It defines moral narrative, and once a moral narrative takes hold, it becomes difficult to challenge without appearing to defy something greater than law. Catherine, at the center of this storm, remains outwardly composed. Those observing her closely notice a steady calm that feels almost deliberate. No declarations, no claims, no visible ambition. That restraint only intensifies public fascination, because in moments of upheaval, the one who does not grasp for power often appears most worthy of it. Her silence is not weakness, it is gravity, and that gravity draws belief toward her like a tide. Inside the palace, the ideological tension is undeniable. Birth order has governed succession with rigid clarity. It is simple, predictable, stable. Divine legitimacy, however, introduces a new layer, one that does not necessarily align with chronology. If the public begins to believe that sacred lineage carries equal or greater weight than statutory inheritance, the monarchy faces a question it cannot ignore. Can spiritual endorsement supersede the mechanics of succession? Even raising the question feels dangerous. Yet it is already being asked in drawing rooms, on broadcast panels, in whispered conversations across the country. Faith communities have responded swiftly. Leaders speak of prophecy fulfilled, of providence unfolding in unexpected ways. Congregations discuss the revelation not as political intrigue, but as spiritual affirmation. In their view, Catherine's composure, her resilience through scrutiny and pressure, now appears less coincidental and more ordained. That interpretation spreads rapidly, strengthening her moral authority even as constitutional debates intensify. The more the institution hesitates, the more belief solidifies, and therein lies the monarchy's quiet crisis. It was built to endure scandal, to weather controversy, to adapt through reform. But existential doubt about the very source of its legitimacy, is something different. If divine selection enters public consciousness as credible, the crown must respond not with dismissal, but with clarity. The balance between faith and institution can no longer remain abstract. It has become immediate, personal. Yet this revelation didn't emerge randomly. It was triggered by something far more personal. Buried within the sealed records was not only lineage, but a letter, a private confession written decades ago by a senior cleric who claimed the truth had been deliberately withheld until the rightful heart was ready. The letter mentions Catherine by name. It speaks of sacrifice, endurance, and a burden greater than jewels or titles, and it suggests someone inside the royal orbit knew this moment would come. The handwriting, steady yet solemn, carried the weight of a conscience that had waited too long. The cleric did not question the authenticity of the prophecy or the genealogical alignment. He accepted it as fact. What troubled him was timing. According to his words, the truth had surfaced once before, quietly examined by church officials and discreetly shared with a select figure connected to the palace. That figure, unnamed but clearly influential, advised restraint. NT, the nation the letter warned, was not prepared. The monarchy was fragile. The revelation would fracture more than it would heal, so the documents were sealed again, not erased, but postponed. The phrase "until the rightful heart was ready" lingers like a pulse through every line. It implies that destiny is not merely inherited, it must be born. The cleric described Catherine not as ambitious, not as assertive, but as enduring. He referenced seasons of scrutiny she endured without retaliation, seasons of public pressure where composure became her shield. To him, those were not random trials, they were refinement, preparation. The suggestion is almost haunting that her suffering was not incidental, but part of a design unfolding slowly, painfully, deliberately. If that interpretation holds even a fragment of truth, then Catherine's journey shifts from fortunate marriage to orchestrated path. The quiet grace, the resilience under relentless observation, the ability to remain steady when narratives around her shifted suddenly. They resemble qualifications rather than coincidences. And the emotional cost of that realization is immense. To discover that your private endurance was witnessed not only by the public, but by history itself is unsettling. It reframes hardship as purpose. It transforms wounds into evidence. Yet the letter carries something darker beneath its reverence. It hints at awareness within royal circles. The cleric writes of consultation and reluctant counsel, suggesting that someone close to the crown understood the implications and chose silence. That silence now feels strategic, protective perhaps, or fearful. If palace figures knew fragments of this truth, their decision to suppress it becomes part of the narrative. Not betrayal necessarily, but control, a deliberate attempt to preserve order at the cost of transparency. And now that the seal is broken, suspicion grows. Who authorized the concealment decades ago? Was it a single advisor protecting stability, or a coordinated effort to prevent upheaval? The absence of names in the letter only deepens intrigue. Silence can shield reputations, but it also invites speculation. As whispers circulate, trust within inner circles begins to thin. Every past decision is re-examined. Every private conversation feels newly relevant. For Catherine, the psychological weight intensifies. It is one thing to learn of sacred lineage. It is another to realize that others may have known and waited. Waiting implies judgment. Waiting implies assessment. Was she being observed for signs of readiness, measured against an unspoken standard? The idea that destiny hovered silently over her life while she navigated public expectation adds a layer of isolation few can comprehend. The letter does not conclude with certainty. It ends with a warning that when truth surfaces, it will test not only faith, but allegiance, and that test is already underway. But destiny does not arrive quietly, and opposition is already mobilizing. Not everyone welcomes a divinely validated queen. Because divine right cannot be negotiated, it cannot be amended. It simply is. And for those whose influence depends on protocol, Catherine's revelation is destabilizing. Whispers of constitutional impossibility begin circulating. Senior figures question the church's authority, yet the public mood shifts rapidly, and resistance risks appearing like defiance of heaven itself. Inside the palace, strategy replaces shock. Communications teams draft statements that say everything and nothing at once. Words like respect, tradition, and continuity are carefully arranged, then rearranged, as advisors attempt to acknowledge the church without conceding ground. The challenge is delicate. To dismiss the Archbishop outright would seem confrontational. To validate him too strongly would suggest surrender. Every syllable is weighed as though the future of the monarchy rests upon punctuation. And in a way, it does. Behind those polished drafts lies a sharper debate. Some senior figures argue that the church has overstepped, that divine interpretation has no authority over constitutional order. Others warn that attacking the church risks igniting a moral backlash far more damaging than quiet acceptance. The tension is not theatrical, it is existential. For centuries, the monarchy and the church have coexisted in symbolic harmony. Now that harmony feels strained, almost brittle. Faith has entered the arena not as ceremony, but as claim. Catherine's response only intensifies the moment. She does not claim the revelation. She does not hint at entitlement. There is no subtle assertion, no veiled suggestion that destiny should alter protocol. Instead, she continues as before, measured, composed, focused on duty. That restraint unsettles critics and strengthens supporters. Because in a climate charged with accusation and defense, the absence of ambition feels almost revolutionary. It becomes harder to portray her as opportunistic when she refuses to exploit what others fear. Outside palace walls, the public reaction grows louder. Crowds speak not of constitutional clauses, but of conviction. For many, the Church's declaration confirms what they already felt instinctively, that Catherine embodies something steady, something reassuring in uncertain times. Faith leaders rally behind the idea of divine ally-gonment. Commentators describe the moment as historic, even transformative. The narrative begins to outpace the palace's attempts at containment. Once belief takes hold, it rarely waits for official clarification. Media outlets frame the revelation as a turning point. Some call it a spiritual awakening within the monarchy. Others describe it as a looming crisis of authority. Headlines grow bolder. Analysts speculate whether this could reshape public perception of succession for generations. The more resistance surfaces within elite circles, the more sympathy flows toward Catherine. It becomes a paradox. Opposition fuels devotion, and devotion, once ignited, is not easily extinguished. Within church leadership, pressure mounts as well. Some clergy stand firmly behind the Archbishop's decision, insisting that truth cannot be subordinated to politics. Others fear the consequences of appearing to challenge the crown directly. The relationship between altar and throne feels less ceremonial now and more confrontational. The air is thick with anticipation, because if the palace attempts to neutralize the claim, the church must decide whether to retreat or to reinforce it. The atmosphere tightens with every passing hour. Silence is no longer sustainable. The nation senses that clarification is coming, a statement, a response, a reckoning. The question is not whether this revelation will be addressed publicly, but how. And then, the Archbishop steps forward again, this time before the nation. In a rare and unscheduled address, the Archbishop speaks not in ambiguity, but in certainty. The records, he declares, are authentic. The lineage is verified, and the Church stands by its revelation. Across the country, reactions ripple from disbelief to reverence. Catherine's composure remained unshaken, but history is shifting in real time. The throne is no longer just inherited, it is illuminated. There is no hesitation in his voice, no cautious phrasing designed to soften impact. He confirms that the sealed documents have undergone rigorous examination, that independent scholars and church authorities have validated every signature, every genealogical mark. This is not rumor elevated to spectacle, it is declaration. And in that declaration lies a quiet thunderclap. Because once authenticity is affirmed publicly, doubt becomes defensive rather than dismissive. The Archbishop does not call for upheaval. He does not challenge the constitutional framework. Instead, he frames the revelation as spiritual truth, an affirmation of lineage that transcends politics. It is careful, it is measured, yet it lands with seismic force. The emphasis remains firmly on moral and spiritual legitimacy. The Church, he explains, does not seek to govern succession, but to acknowledge what history has preserved. In his words, divine alignment does not abolish tradition, it deepens it. That nuance is critical. He is not overthrowing the monarchy, he is redefining how it may be understood, and that subtle distinction allows belief to grow without immediate confrontation. The crown is not displaced, it is reframed. For Catherine's family, the moment carries emotional weight beyond public spectacle. Those closest to her feel both pride and apprehension. Pride, because affirmation from the Church elevates her story beyond chance. Apprehension, because affirmation also isolates. To be recognized as part of sacred history is to be set apart. The burden intensifies, the scrutiny sharpens, and within that private circle, there is awareness that life will not return to ordinary rhythm after the Symbol 2. The monarchy responds with calculated composure. An official statement acknowledges the Archbishop's address, expressing respect for the Church's role and reaffirming commitment to constitutional order. The language is diplomatic, balanced, cautious. There is no denial, no endorsement, simply recognition. It is a response designed to steady the ground without igniting further tremors. Yet even restraint feels meaningful. Silence would have implied rejection. This measured acknowledgement suggests something else, a willingness to coexist with the revelation rather than confront it directly. Beyond national borders, the reaction expands. Commonwealth nations analyze the implications, commentators debating what spiritual validation means within a modern global framework. Some view it as symbolic, a fascinating intersection of tradition and faith. Others see it as transformative, a moment that redefines how monarchy is perceived in an age skeptical of inherited power. The conversation grows international, amplifying the magnitude of what began as sealed parchment in a forgotten vault. And beneath every analysis lies a deeper realization. Something irreversible has begun. Once divine right enters public consciousness as credible, it reshapes narrative permanently. Even if succession remains unchanged, perception will never be the same. Catherine is no longer seen solely through the lens of marriage or protocol. She is seen through prophecy, through lineage, through something that feels older than politics itself. That shift cannot be undone by statement or strategy. Yet the final chapter of this revelation is not about power, it is about choice. Divine right is not a command, it is a calling. And now, the weight of that calling rests on Catherine alone. She did not seek it. He did not orchestrate it. Yet destiny has found her. The nation watches, waiting for a sign, a word, a gesture that confirms what many now believe, that her path was written long before politics intervened. But will she accept a destiny that reshapes the monarchy forever? In the quiet aftermath of declarations and debates, the focus narrows to a single figure, not the Archbishop, not the advisors, not even the institution itself, Catherine. For all the thunder surrounding prophecy and lineage, the ultimate question is profoundly personal. Destiny may be documented in ink, but it must be carried in flesh and resolve. And carrying it requires more than heritage, it demands consent. Those closest to her describe a stillness, not of indifference, but of contemplation. A woman weighing history against humility, because accepting divine legitimacy is not the same as claiming power. It is stepping into something larger than self. Her entire journey now appears reframed. The years of scrutiny, the relentless comparisons, the burden of expectation placed upon her as she entered royal life. What once seemed like trials of adjustment now resemble preparation. Yet preparation does not erase doubt, it intensifies responsibility. To be told that your place was written before you could speak your own name is overwhelming. It challenges identity, it reshapes purpose, and in that reshaping lies an inner conflict that few can comprehend. Duty has always guided her path, but this is different. This is destiny, asking for acknowledgement. The symbolism of divine legitimacy in a modern age is both powerful and precarious. Monarchies today survive not through force, but through relevance, through moral steadiness, through the ability to embody continuity in a fractured world. If Catherine Embrun says this revelation, the monarchy could shift from being merely constitutional to something more profound, a moral anchor rooted in spiritual narrative. That transformation would not require changing laws, it would require changing perception. And perception, once aligned with faith, can redefine institutions quietly but permanently. Public anticipation grows by the hour. Citizens analyze every appearance, every pause, searching for signs of acceptance or refusal. Faith leaders speak of calling, political commentators urge caution. Social conversations swell with conviction and skepticism in equal measure. Yet beneath the noise lies a simple truth. The decision rests with her. No declaration from the church can compel her response. No pressure from the palace can silence it entirely. When she speaks or chooses not to, the future of the crown will tilt accordingly. There is also the matter of legacy. What does it mean for her children, for the next generation? A divine narrative attached to the monarchy could strengthen unity or provoke division. It could elevate the institution beyond politics or entangle it deeper within belief. Catherine understands that her choice will ripple outward, shaping not only her life, but the story of the monarchy for decades to come. The gravity of that awareness is immense, and still she remains measured, calm, almost resolute, not in defiance, not in eagerness, but in quiet strength, because perhaps destiny is not something declared in grand speeches. Perhaps it is accepted in silence first, then carried with dignity. The nation waits for confirmation, for clarity, for a signal that the prophecy has found not just a lineage, but a willing heart. The air feels suspended, as though history itself is holding its breath. One statement could calm the storm or intensify it. One acknowledgement could solidify belief or fracture it further. The monarchy stands at a threshold it never anticipated crossing. And Catherine stands at its center, aware that stepping forward means stepping into permanence. Because when destiny is revealed, history doesn't simply continue, it changes direction. And the crown may already be moving toward its divinely chosen queen. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.